So, of course, the first thing, Ketan, that I'm speaking about is, well, at the Police Services Centennial Sports and Family Day, the Commissioner of Police was basically asked the question to rate her performance. I'm paraphrasing, of course, and her response was excellent. Professor Diosaran, he thinks maybe it was a tongue-in-cheek answer, although, and given the circumstances of where she was at the time, I could kind of see where he's going there with it. But to some extent, given the fact that the murder rate is what it is and crime is what it is, I'm not too sure if I am willing to accept a benign answer of, well, it wasn't a serious answer. And then, of course, if it is serious, either way, it comes back to what we said when McDonald Jacobs was put on the spot and he answered the question. Don't answer this question. There is nothing good from you answering this question. And I don't think anybody really wants to hear, I'm doing an excellent job. How you assess it, that varies, as some of the criminologists did. I just don't think it's an answer that is acceptable to the general public.
Of course not. Just bear in mind, whatever answer Earl Airwood Christopher would have given would not have been satisfactory to the public. For example, if she said, I think I can do better, I'm not doing well, the public would have said, so why are you in this position? Because she said she's rating herself as excellent as the first 100 days in office. I think that is the worst possible response that you can give.
Worst?
Yes, the worst possible response that you can give. Because, as I said, any response would have been bad in the eyes of the public. That in particular, saying excellent, is the worst possible response. Because if I was to analyze this and say, okay, Earl Airwood Christopher is actually admitting this is the peak of her capabilities as the Commissioner of Police, then we're all doomed. I mean, in a way, it's a good thing for the public to understand and realize there's not going to be a reduction in crime because really, this is all Earl Airwood Christopher can do if she's giving herself an excellent rating. Now, if I were to take a page out of my colleague's book and say, listen, she was put on this spot and therefore that was the only possible answer that she could have given because, I mean, previously you suggested because they're put on a spot like that, sometimes it's the only answer that comes to their mind. So, if I were to be fair, possibly that may be the case, but still, it's difficult to digest this. If this is where we are, I hate to see, if this is an excellent performance, I'd love to see what a subpar, terrible performance could be like from the Commissioner of Police. Now, on what benchmark are you going to rate her? Is it going to be the communication from the Trans-Tobago Police Service? Is it going to be murders and just simply murders alone? You see, the problem is, I can't necessarily blame her. Because those in authority, as we currently sit and are speaking here this morning, Sean, they do not live in reality. They are not in touch with reality. They make judgment based off of their egos. They speak based off of their egos. Their egos are essentially what rules their mindset and what rules their communication with the public. And if that is the case, Earl Airwood Christopher has proven no difference. Now, is it fair to rate her 100 days in this particular position, given how crime has evolved over the couple of years? Is it fair? Possibly not. Should we wait more time? Okay, but just bear in mind one thing. She has set a benchmark for herself of June to reduce murders.
Yes, she did.
So therefore, it would not be unfair of us if next month, at the end of next month, come the 30th of June 2023, we sit down and we analyze her performance. If it is poor, if it is excellent, it's not necessarily going to be unfair.
Now, and to be fair, I don't think we're quite on the record-setting murder rate that we were afraid of, but we're more or less, I think generally speaking, in line to where things were last year. So it's not as though we're going to see a significant enough reduction, and by significant I mean more than say 10 or 20 or so, a small figure like that. She set herself up with regards to that statement, and now she answered the question. And yes, the only answer I think that would have worked is to basically sidestep the question because there is no good answer. But more importantly, even if you take the answers seriously, as you mentioned too, you will ask, well, what criteria are you giving yourself this grade? I have seen, I can't remember which criminologist it was, but he did more or less say, well, look, we have to remember, and he reminded us in what he was brought us saying, this situation is bigger than the TTPS. This is bigger than just what Earl Edward Christopher could have done within a few months. So it could just be that her performance, technically speaking, is excellent. But again, with regards to the public and the messaging that you're sending, right, we're not really seeing excellent. What we're seeing, ironically, is average, because you are more or less doing a very similar job to your predecessor. So you're not better, you're not worse, you're more or less average, because the murder rate more or less is going to reach at the same point.
The day that these individuals in authority, and I know that we're speaking specifically of the Commissioner of Police, but as I mentioned previously, it seems as though those in authority, both on the sides of the opposition and the current administration, by the way, and obviously within government-appointed agencies as well, because let's not underestimate the fact that these are political appointments. Understand that they rate themselves and they think and they operate based off of their egos. They're completely out of touch with reality. The day that these individuals can be truthful or experience what reality is if they had no security. Could you imagine a minister without a security detail or without having the facilities of security around their premises? And if you think that, okay, listen, they don't actually have security with them 24/7, or believe you me, maybe you see a minister driving a vehicle or even a senator driving a vehicle and so on and so forth. If these ministers did not have a security detail, and if Earl Edward Christopher didn't even have a security detail as well, I believe they'd be a bit more in touch with reality.
I think what you said just sparked a thought. I think perhaps we must always remember they could all be, pardon the analogy, little emperors, right? And nobody's willing to call them out on the fact that they're wearing no clothes. So just about everybody around them is like, yes, yes, your wardrobe is beautiful. Meanwhile, the person is stark naked. And at least in this case, however, it's not a situation where, you're testing, the opinions of the people around you, right? In this case, it is you're eating up and you're not really looking for a contrarian view to backstop yourself. That is one of the things about leadership, especially if you can't, they choose to create an environment where it's difficult to question them. So, of course, now all the feedback they get from people within the vicinity of those jobs, it's not necessarily going to be negative.
Kudos to Earl Edward Christopher for even wanting to answer the question. Again, she was put on the spot.
Kudos.
I would say kudos because, listen, you actually answered the question. People would shy away from it. But as I said, no answer would have been good enough for the public. Let's be realistic. However, the thing is, if I had the opportunity, my follow-up question to her would simply be, on what grounds would you rate your performance as excellent? What justification? How would you say, if you are going to say, listen, I rate my performance based off of the resources that are available to me and the management of such resources, I'd say then clearly you don't understand really where those resources are. I understand police officers are human too. But when it is that you call a police station and they don't have a patrol right now or they don't have a vehicle, and yet you see 2 police vehicles parked up outside a snow cone vendor's place, which I've seen multiple times, by the way, right? What's going on there? So, again, I would just simply ask, on what grounds would you rate yourself as being excellent? Because I can't look at, put it this way, neither you and I could look at ourselves and say, hey, listen, Sean, I do a damn good job here on Talking Point. I'm doing excellent. It wouldn't make sense. Because if I tell you that now, guess what? Tomorrow morning, I'm not even going to bother to try and do better than I did today. So, if this is the peak of Earl Edward Christopher's momentum as Commissioner of Police and her ability to actually manage things, if this is the peak, we're doomed.
One last thing before we move on. Senior positions care about results. It doesn't matter how well you did on a curve relative to what's reasonable. If you're a CEO, if you're the head cheese of something that is not just a small business or whatever, results matter. Whether we think it's fair or not, results matter. It does not matter how great you manage to deal with the challenges on your tenure. If the results are bad, generally speaking, whether it's the public, whether it's stakeholders, whether it's shareholders of a private corporation, they will want to replace you because you can't, and in this case, again, the murder rate waits for no one. The murder rate does not care about your performance graded on a curve. And I think one of the main issues with her that I have as Commissioner of Police is she can have all the technical skills she wants. The one technical skill she lacks is public relations and communication. And in that position, we might want it not to be political, but it's a leadership position. That's a leadership function. And I think it's proven that she doesn't have what it takes with that regard. But she has to be careful now not to let it sink her, and we'll see how that goes.